Mr. Hurston, at the last hearing, I asked whether the level of fraud warranted the suspension of the Hubzone program. Administrator Carranza's answer at the time was no, and that steps will be taken to eliminate fraud. Today, we have found out that several companies identified last year are still in the program and have since then received $25 million in new Hubzone set-aside contracts. Added to this, the fraud in the program now appears national in scope. I'm going to ask this question to you, and I'm going to ask this question again. Will you make a commitment to suspend the Hubzone program until fraud controls are in place and all companies with a Hubzone contract can be verified?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't have the authority. It's not on.
The speaker.
I'm sorry. Madam Chairwoman, I don't have the authority to make the decision to suspend the Hubzone program. What I can do today is to commit to you that we will take the proper steps to make sure that we have the proper risk management framework in place to mitigate fraud, waste, and abuse in the program. But the decision to suspend the program is one that would be a decision that would certainly be an administration decision.
That's enough, Mr. Hurston. Mr. Scheer, the SBA testified in July that they will take several steps to fix the problems with the Hubzone program, as identified by the GAO. At this chart show, very little has been accomplished. Why is that?
I would say that the agency did not recognize the commitment that was necessary to address these very serious deficiencies and to implement our recommendations.
Mr. Kutz, during last July's hearing, SBA testified that its goal was to perform site visits on 5% of the Hubzone programs firm. Today, we hear that the SBA is performing 1.8 site visits per month and has done only 7 this year. That is less than 0.25% of the 10,000 firms in the program. Is that a sufficient deterrent to fraud?
No.
Administrator Hurston, why is the SBA doing less than what the agency promised back in July?
Well, I'm not clear on what the agency promised at that time, but I can tell you that the office is working aggressively to put in place new procedures and new processes.
Did you review, excuse me 1 second. I guess that if I was you sitting at the chair, and I know that I have to come and testify before this committee, that I will review the congressional records of last year in July when this issue was discussed in the hearing, where the administrator made a commitment to this committee, and then you will assess whether or not steps have been taken to make the corrections.
Well, I did, in fact, review the record, and I don't recall seeing anything specifically regarding a commitment on site visits. And she very well may have made that commitment, but I'm saying I did not actually see it myself. But I do know that they have undertaken aggressive procedures. They've implemented, they're undergoing right now a business process re-engineering process where they're looking at all of the elements of the program, and they're establishing the necessary corrections, the necessary improvements to mitigate the fraud and abuse in the program. We take this very seriously. We take the notion of prudent stewardship over the program very seriously, and we are approaching this matter very seriously.
Mr. Kutz, what type of site visits should SBA be performing and how often?
They should perform site visits, first of all, in the application process, at least on a risk-based basis, if you will, and they should be unannounced. They should not tell them they're coming. If we had told the company with the shiny new mailbox we were coming, the mailbox would have been there before we showed up rather than after we showed up. We've seen other evidence of, if you show up on a surprise basis, mail stuffed under the door, you talk to the neighbors, no one's been here in months, that's what you get with the unannounced site visit. If you tell them you're coming, then you have a problem. And in the program examination, I think you have the same situation. Once they get in the program, again, on a risk-based basis, unannounced, randomly, you should be actually going out and checking out what's really going on.
Of the hub zone businesses that you spoke to, it seems many were not worried about meeting eligibility requirements. The silver mailbox you alluded to is symptomatic of the cavalier attitude. Do you think these businesses' attitudes reflect an awareness that punishment by SBA is a remote, if non-existent possibility?
No, I don't think they think that there's a serious enforcement at this point. If you got, some of them actually admitted to us what they did. They're not going to say they committed fraud, but effectively they did. And if you could let me read a few examples for you, I think you'll see the pattern here. One of our cases admitted to bidding and accepting large hub zone contracts the firm couldn't perform without significant subcontracting. Another one admitted subcontracting the majority of their work to other firms or individuals. This was a services firm. Another one admitted noncompliance with the principal office requirement. Another one admitted they listed the principal office for proposal writing and nobody actually really worked in the office except one person. And another one admitted that they kept listed principal office only to meet the hub zone requirement. And so I think you see the kind of attitude out there, and I don't think they think they'll ever get caught. And if they get caught, as we've seen, there's no serious punishment.
Based on your investigations, can you provide this committee with an estimate about the number or percentage of fraudulent firms operating in the hub zone nationwide?
Only with the ones we've looked at. We've only really looked at the principal office and 35% residency requirement. And for the ones we've looked at, again, they were based upon data mining and certain characteristics of certain cities such as Washington, San Diego, and San Antonio, that it was over 50% of the ones we looked at. The 50% subcontractor requirement, we weren't looking for that, but it actually popped out with several of the cases we had where it was very clear that the work was being done not by a hub zone company, but by large, in many cases, multinational firms that were doing well over half of the work.